is U.S. Congress, the red is statewide elected officials, the green is legislatures. The very top line is 30%. And so, and this is over years, going from 1979 to 2014. And those lines are leveling and kind of flattening, and in the case of state representatives, it's actually going down. So that's sort of the facts, and then the question is, okay, why is that? And second point is there needs to be a shift in the paradigm. And underlying our organization, our philosophy is that women are not really comfortable with power to begin with. But if you switch the paradigm from having the power over something to the power to do something, women won't necessarily rise to the top if it means they're going to run a company and be in charge of things. But if you tell them that they're working for a company that makes water filters, and that if these are going to address an environmental problem, they will do everything that they possibly can, because that's the power to get something done. And all of a sudden it's something that women can relate to and can do. They won't run for elected office until, again, there's an issue that they want to address, and they feel very strongly about it, and then they'll go for it. So there's a shift that occurs when you say, I have the power to do something, versus I'm in charge of all these people, I have the power over them. So redefining power, embracing it with intention, and leading authentically. And there's a quote from Katie Ornstein from the Op-Ed Project. I will go into, that's something you might want to Google. It's the whole project that she did. Essentially it is that you have to step up to the plate. So research finds, there's been a lot of talk. When we started the organization, we did a whole survey of what's been done for the last 20, 30 years in terms of women in leadership. And what we found is over and over and over again, we know what the problems are. And study after study after study tells us that women are not comfortable with power, that there's gender biases and stereotypes that get in the way of women in leadership, that women negotiate differently than men, and there's a gender divide, and invariably it is less effective for women when they come to the negotiating table, and particularly when it comes for advocating for themselves. Women are sometimes very good at negotiating on behalf of other people, but when it comes to negotiating for themselves, they're speechless. Differences in leadership, communications, and styles. Men do things one way, women do things a different way. And finally, again, over and over and over again, women will say we don't have the role models, we don't have sponsors, we don't have mentors. And the last item, and I'm going to unwrap this a lot, is inflexible workplace structures that get in the way of women being able to reach leadership positions, being able to thrive in leadership positions because of the conflict between family life and having a career. So we're dealing with it from the perspective of solutions. What do we do about these issues? And so the first step is to, and so take the lead, and I'm going to flip through this fairly quickly. We have a 4-pronged program. We teach women skills and approaches to leadership. We present them with role models. We connect them with women who can become sponsors and mentors. And finally, we drive change through thought leadership and movement building. And that's addressing, to create a systemic change to address the flexible workplace structures. So 4 programs that we have in Take the Lead, and that sort of breaks out into all these different programs that we do. Webinars, online certificate courses, mentoring, role model presentations. In February, we had a launch where we had Sheryl Sandberg speaking. and this fabulous woman from Morgan Stanley who is an investment banker at a very senior level, also happens to be a gospel singer. And it was extremely inspiring experience to listen to her. And we do thought leadership and movement building. Now, I suspect you're probably more interested in how all of that might relate to where you are and where you're going. So if we take each of those one at a time, leadership skills is, as I said, we communicate differently. If you understand those differences in communication, it's almost like learning a foreign language. Is that women will say one thing and they really mean another, men will say something and the women don't understand what they're talking about. If you can learn how those styles are different, and the more you know about that, the better you're going to be as women in the workplace communicating with the men around you, and as men in the workplace communicating with the women around you. Secondly, we've got, that's more on that, is bilingual communication, speaking of each other. Defining goals and creating a personal action plan. And I put in parentheses, know your value. This is something that's important for everyone in the room, I think, is that you're more likely to become a leader if you know where you're going yourself and you have a plan of how you're going to get there. And you know what your strengths are, and you know how those strengths are applicable to what you're trying to do. The mistake that many, many women make is in not knowing what their value is. And again, AAUW did a study that found that 1 year out of college, women made 83 cents on the dollar. 1 year out. And it's because men are much more likely to ask, a woman gets a job offer, she's like, thanks, when can I start? A guy gets a job offer and he's like, well, how much am I going to get paid? And what are my vacations? And what are the benefits? And when can I expect my first promotion? And then after I get promoted, how soon is it going to be before I get promoted again? And oh, by the way, I'm negotiating with your 3 other competitors. You're going to have to improve that package. And that's a skill. And that's an approach that women can learn. They just have to grab that power and go for it and ask for it. I hear stories after stories after stories of women that have been in one job for 15 years, and all the guys are getting promoted all around them. And then you say, when was the last time you asked for a raise? And they haven't asked for a raise because they're waiting for their bosses. They assume that because they're doing such a good job that the bosses are going to notice, and they're going to come over and they're going to offer them a raise. It doesn't happen when you're in business. It might happen in school that if you do a good job, you get a good grade on your paper, but when you're in a business, that's not the way that it works anymore. And somehow I think the men understand that, and the men are kind of, every 6 months they're going in saying to the boss, you got to pay me more money. And the women are sitting back and not walking through that door. Effective self-presentation, same thing. Is you've got to know how to blow your own horn, how to promote yourself, and to communicate to people that are important where your path is and how you're going to get there. Same thing, self-advocacy and negotiation. It's all part of the same defining your own purpose. Changing attitudes. There's a book by Hattie Kay and Claire Shipman just came out recently. I've got a reference list for you where they studied all kinds of women. One of the major differentials they found was the degree of confidence. Is that men will be confident that they can do something even if they're completely incompetent. Be confident that they can do it even if they're completely incompetent. Women will practice and learn and study and research and still be not confident that they can do something. And it creates a huge divide in the workplace that has effects on where they end up. This is a Sheryl Sandberg thing. I don't know how many of you are aware of Lean In. Sheryl is the COO of Facebook. She wrote a book called Lean In, and has started an organization called Lean In, and one of her things is that men are considered leaders and women are considered, when they do the exact same thing, are considered bossy. And she's got this whole campaign that it's okay to be bossy. If you're the boss, you have to be bossy. Has to do with the gender stereotypes and the expectations, but it's all right to behave that way. And making waves is, just because it isn't being done doesn't mean that it can't be done, and stepping up to the plate and implementing change in organizations. And that gets, we'll come back to the inflexible workplaces again. Finding role models and learning from them is a matter, and again, this is applicable to the guys just as the girls, but girls will repeat, or women will repeatedly say, you know, how can I be a leader? I don't see any women out there that are leaders. I don't know how to be a leader as a woman. You can put yourself in a place where you're going to see those women. There's all kinds of resources on the internet right now. There's a website called Makers, which not only has this fabulous documentary on the women's movement, but they've got hundreds, maybe thousands now, of interviews with women in leadership positions talking about how they got where they are today. And you can seek out these role models, and you can seek out in the same way sponsors and mentors. Put yourself in a place where there are women who can help you along, who can give you guidance, who can connect you where you need to be connected. You know, and whether that's to get into the college that you want, which I'm sure is something very much on people's minds right now, or it's to get the job that you want, to get into the industry that you want. People are out there willing to help. You have to ask. So listening to speeches, learning about other women who are leaders, and these are some places, and I have this, Dr. Miller can provide you with a resource on all of these links. I mentioned, obviously, our organization, Makers, is another one, Women is another one, Level League helps women in careers, Pearls is the woman who's a investment banker and a gospel singer. Girls Who Code is actually for high school girls, organization of women interested in computers and coding. Accessing role models and networks, where you can find sponsors, is utilize networks, and some of these are applicable to you now, some of them are going to be applicable to you later in life. Is school networks, alumni networks. The first secretary I hired, I had a list of resumes that was about this big, and I kind of whittled it down to one that was maybe about this big, and I ended up hiring the girl who had gone to the college that I went to. And people respond to that connection. And so, you know, talk to the Blair alumni, talk to people that you have some kind of a connection with. People like to help other people and give them guidance. As much as you need their help, it makes them feel good to be able to help you. As you get older, there's women's organizations, there's industry associations. Every industry has a women's realty association, women's lawyers association, women's accountants association, etc. Company networks, the same thing. There'll be, you know, the Bristol Myers Women's Association. Key factor is to network purposefully. And again, there's a gender divide here. Is women go to functions and they'll walk up to meet somebody, they'll introduce themselves, and the next thing you know, they're talking about where are they from, where did they grow up, how many kids do they have, and the female style is to create a relationship. A guy will be, here's my card, where's your card, what do you do, this is what I do, what can you do for me, what can I do for you? And just to the point. And it turns out that having a relationship is very helpful to business, but women are so focused on having that relationship, they forget that they have to ask for the business. And so when you do network, figure out what it is that you want from the people that you're networking with, and then ask for it. And don't lose your eye, take your eye off of that goal because you're building a relationship. Don't forget to ask for the thing that you need done. So the last thing that we work on is thought leadership and movement building, because again, there's some basic inflexible workplace structures, some basic changes that have to happen in the workplace to make it easier for women, because women are the ones that carry the children. And once the children come along, it's really difficult to get out there and have a career. A historic kind of, there were a lot of women in my generation who went out, we listened to Gloria Steinem saying you can have it all, and we went out into the workplace and had careers and then had babies, and like with the first child it was maybe easy to we were able to work through it. By the time you had a second child, it was like really hard to go to work every single day, to work 8 hours when your child was in school for 6 hours, and to be pulled between your family obligations and your work obligations. We can skip through this. Let's skip this. These again, I'm going to pass out different resources on sort of background stuff on all of this. One more. Okay, this is where we are. One more. Okay, so these are things that were talked about back in the 70s when I was first going, 70s and 80s when I was first starting to work at your age and getting out of school and going into the workforces, is we were going to have flex hours, we were going to have on-site childcare, we were going to have paternity or family leaves, we were going to have job sharing, and we were going to have advancement based on, well, leave the last one off, those first four, and they never happened. They're now starting, progressive companies like Google, some companies now have these things, but it's not across the board. There was a Child Care Act during the Nixon administration that was going to create universal child care that never passed. It got brought up again. It never happened. Fortunately, today we have technology, and it's no longer necessary to be sitting in front of a desk to hold down a job. And I'm sure you've seen your parents at your sports games, and they're sitting there doing their email, and they're in between the periods, they're running over and making phone calls and so forth and so on. We all have connection to the world, whether we're in the office or we're home, or we're on the road, or in between, whatever. And today it's possible to work while your kids are in school, see the games, have dinner with your kids, and then go back to work when they're doing their homework at night. And so in theory, workplace structures should be changing, but they're not changing quite so fast. And we think it's going to take a movement, it's going to take a lot of people changing their personal workplace situation and saying, this is what we want, this is the way we want our lives to live. And from what I hear, I believe it's just as important for the men as it is for the women of your generation. And in part because I think you saw your mothers, if they had careers, being pulled and not knowing how to do both. And with technology, we can have a quality of life and have a successful career and have a successful family. Is that it? Oh, I have a nice quote for you. There you go. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And that goes against a theory that says that if you want to create a movement, it's got to start at home. It's got to start in the places around you. And you have to make your situation what you want the rest of the world to look like. Yeah, name it, change it, okay. And there you go. That's